Muito boa tarde a todos. Eu, antes de mais, queria agradecer à Câmara Municipal de Lisboa ter-nos disponibilizado aqui o Palácio da Mitra, nesta organização que é da Lisbonweek, em articulação com a VIC Properties, que nos permitiu fazer um debate sobre um grande tema que a nós nos tem que preocupar, nós que amamos Lisboa e nós que intervimos em Lisboa, que é as novas oportunidades urbanas que esta cidade nos vai dar. E eu vou começar este contexto, vou fazer um contexto em português, depois a discussão e o debate vai-se fazer em inglês, mas eu farei agora aqui um pequeno resumo sobre os grandes temas que nos interessa discutir e depois já apresento os intervenientes. A questão das novas oportunidades é, sobretudo, que as cidades estão sempre em permanente reinvenção. E, às vezes, os grandes problemas constituem grandes desafios. Aquilo que nos pode parecer dramático numas cidades são as oportunidades que nós temos, às vezes, de as reinventar. Foi o terremoto em Lisboa, foram os bombardeamentos da Segunda Guerra em Londres e, digamos, a forma positiva como nós podemos enfrentar estes desafios, às vezes trágicos, é a forma como conseguimos reinventar as nossas cidades. E é a forma como podemos e como devemos antecipar o futuro, sempre de uma perspectiva muito positiva, para transformar aquilo que nos pode parecer mau naquilo que será, provavelmente, o grande futuro de uma cidade. Nós temos grandes desafios atuais. As nossas cidades estão a mudar muito como sempre mudaram. Nestes 2 anos que nós tivemos uma pandemia, vimos que a forma como nós usamos a cidade foi diferente e é diferente, agora que estamos a sair desta situação que nos encontramos. E a nossa discussão é a forma que temos que pensar Lisboa. Quais são os desafios atuais? Quais são as grandes oportunidades que nós nos temos que agarrar? Acabámos de fazer uma visita ao Braço de Prata, ao projeto do Renzo Piano que fez para o Braço de Prata, que constitui uma dessas novas oportunidades, constituiu num determinado momento, o projeto já não é novo, e neste sentido temos a Elizabeth Trezane que vem e o Paulo Pelanda que vem do ateliê do Renzo Piano. Vamos ter o Luís Paulo, que é do gabinete de Topiaris, que fez o projeto dos Jardins da Frente Ribeirinha deste empreendimento e de todo o conjunto. Temos o Nuno Mateus, que é um profissional, um arquiteto que tem muito trabalho em Lisboa e, portanto, que está permanentemente perante estes desafios. E temos, por último, mas provavelmente uma personalidade-chave, que é a Filipa Roseta, que é a vereadora da Habitação da Câmara Municipal de Lisboa. Nós tínhamos ainda um outro interveniente, que era a Cristina Cavaco, que fez, em determinado momento, ela foi a coordenadora da estratégia para as cidades sustentáveis, portanto era um documento oficial, mas ela foi apanhada ontem pelo Covid e, portanto, não está connosco, estará eventualmente no streaming. Eu a todos queria agradecer a presença e vamos iniciar este debate. Primeiro eu vou lançar este tema inicial e depois a discussão será aqui nesta mesa, sem mesa redonda, um bocadinho mais livre. Elizabeth and Paulo, I made a very short introduction about the issue of the new opportunities in the city, especially we are in Lisbon, and you collaborate in this project of Renzo Piano of your office, and it's the questions of what are the main issues that we need to think in the near future and in the long future of the cities, taking as a starting point your project in Braço de Prata.
First of all, thank you for this invitation, and I'm sorry that I need to speak English. The project here in Lisbon was a very nice and interesting project for my office because each project has a different story and a different, in a way, you know, relation, especially with the city. We came in Lisbon and we tried to learn as much. And the first thing as an architect we think need to do is to listen the place, listen the people, and try to absorb as much as possible what the site tell you. And what the transformation, you need in some way to try to discover the transformation that the place where your project need to go in different years. And at the same time, try to create a vision with the client and the municipality, what can be the challenges of the future. So I think one of the most difficult things for an architect is try to not respond to the question of the moment where we are, but try to have a vision for the future as much as possible. Also because architecture is something, at least for us, need to stay not forever, but it need to build to stay forever. After city has transformation, but you need to think for very, very long term. In this specific project, the main challenge was for us was to try to create a place where people not only want to live, because the main, you know, function was to create place and houses for people, but also a place where people want to go, and to create a kind of connection with the center of the city, because it's not too far, and at the same time, the other main and big, you know, development that Lisbon was having is the exhibition park. So our first approach was how we couldn't link this area with the rest, with the nature, with the landscape, and with the city. And one of the first points was to create a connection with the water. This is something that we did also in our project, in our own city, that is Genova, in 92, when we did all the renovation of all the harbor. But the connection of the city to the nature when it's water or landscape is fundamental. Many times during the transformation, the water and the nature has been in some way divided by street, by railways, by the port. So keeping the functionality of the city, but you need to find a way to give back to the people as much as possible of these places. And this is something that you know, it's something that we always, you know, try to apply on our project. And in the last 2 years of the pandemic was even coming out how is important to have this type of outdoor spaces and connection, whatever it's residential, offices, or any other function that we have. So in Prata, we have an opportunity to connect our project with this nice park that was built by the municipality in front of us, and move all the transportation street, you know, in the middle of our, so it doesn't need to be completely detached, in the middle of our expansion, but to leave more air and more, you know, visual between the first building that we have built and the water. And so we continue to work in different projects, whatever is in main city or like in the border of a historical center. with the same approach of how to improve some spaces that were completely part of a transformation of a city. And this is a process that you can do only, the architect never works alone. It's impossible. We need to work with great landscape people. You need to have a great client. You need to have important person from the municipality. So it's a really team process. Without a team, at least we don't think that a process can be a successful project.
Okay, thank you. Paul, you want
I don't have that much to add to what Elisabetta said, but I will try to give my contribution to the discussion. So, first of all, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. As Elisabetta was saying, when we start a project, we start listening the site. And this is fundamental, because you have to listen and to talk with the people, with the site, and also for the people that in the future could live in the site, also for a few minutes of their life. And it is important to reactivate all the connections, the flows. For example, here in Prata, the site was basically blocking the connection of Marviglia with the Tagus. And one of the first idea was to recreate a series of connection to increase the permeability at the urban scale between the old city and the river. At the same time, it is important to understand that when you build something, you use a lot of energy, a lot of resources, a lot of material. And so it is important to give back something, to, for example, try to use as less as possible energy, to be as sustainable as possible. So, for example, in Prata, we have this double skin facade. So it is basically a ventilated facade that will shade the building. It will reduce the necessity of air conditioning during the winter, during the summer, of course. And it is important to understand also the exposition of the building and to play with the solar gains, with the exterior roller blinds in order to reduce the energy consumption. And it is important also to experiment a little bit with the materials. For example, in Prata, we decided to use the ceramic, which is basically part of the story of the Lisbon. The glossiness of the ceramic will play in the future with the light, with the water. In other projects, now we are using a lot the wood because it is really and truly sustainable, it is renewable, it is a storage for the CO2 that is basically the big problem that we are experiencing in this last year. And so give back something is also give back a place for people, not only for the users of a project, but for everyone that in the future could interact with the area. And of course, it is important the beauty, and the fact that of the building, but it is important more or less the harmony of the space. It is important to create a sequence of spaces that are different and could attract as much as possible people. And as Elisabetta was saying, it is important also to have a good relation with the nature, because we need to connect all the project with nature, to let the nature enter into the project, and this is basically what I can say about our way. I don't want to repeat too many things because we are working together.
We come back.
Good afternoon. It's thank you very much to invite us to participate. Our team, Topiadis, I'm just one of the members, in this great meeting and this fantastic conversation. And when you're talking, Carlos, about the problems and opportunities that cities offer with their increasing complexity and increasing apparently difficulty. I was thinking that one of the opportunities is to have more and more moments like this. We are actually talking more and more and more with each other, and we said, as we said, as teams. And from that talking and that changing of opinions, new ideas and fantastic creativity comes up. Concerning our specific more work in green structures for the city, from the private spaces of each family home to the public areas, I think we should not forget that this thing about gardens is, well, houses, and I don't want to minimize the importance of houses, because but houses are more shelters and have really functions to, of course, some shelters are like this one, a bit fantastic. When it comes to gardens, it's really where people, where the proper owners have more relaxation, thinking, pleasure, reflection, contemplation, which is not what happens in the house always. So with the increasing of cities and industrialization and so on, the leaders understood that moments of pleasure, relaxation, should not be just a privilege of the ones that can do it, the leaders, the court, but if we bring that to the public and to the workers, we will have a much better city. So this fantastic thing appears in the 19th century, that this private thing of pleasure in the garden becomes a public thing of pleasure for all of us. And all of these, and the first examples were, of course, more, and in Portugal and in Lisbon, they were more from the public realm. And with increasing of Lisbon, with increasing of the needs of those spaces, we come up to the middle of, I would say, 20th century, and municipalities, the state, understood that it's impossible to create those areas of pleasure, of relaxation for thousands of people just by public means. And here we start seeing other organizations, and I would mention here in the middle of 20th century the Gulbenkian Foundation, who creates that incredible garden, which is not a public constructed garden, but it's a foundation. And as we come to the end of the 20th century, and right now, we start seeing the private sector, the promoters, thinking that is really important, and it's really important for the urbanizations. So we has a team that plan and design together with all the other professions these outdoor spaces. We look to these, we never forget this. So we have to address special, and as Carlos said, not problems, because we that deal with plan and creativity and all of that, the word problem is a kind of a blocking. So I would say issues that the increasing complexity of the city comes, and with the knowledge of ecology and environment brought. And these ones has to be resolved with gardens, like the drainage, floods, and pollution, and so on. But we treat all of them always having in mind that in the end they are going to be used by people, and people they have to provide relaxation to the city, because this is one of the points that you think that the cities has to have. I'm getting long. I'm just finished with this. What brought here the Brass Prata. I think Brass Prata it's an incredible example, and from a fantastic architect team, but also the vision of the promoters who thought that something like this would be acceptable, and they were willing to pay for such a thing. And the municipality also saw that. So in Bras Prata, we have that public park along the river, which it was not us who did, because unfortunately we could not enter the competition because we work. We have the well. It's quite the reason. It's quite good that we couldn't participate because we have the opportunity to work with your team, which Renzo Piano team, which is fantastic. But we work a lot with this, with you, with this urban fabric, where we can have in such an urbanization, we have squares, we have a park, we have incredible line. Narrow streets focus the river, the silver river, the silver, the river itself that reflects as silver, and more than that, and becoming to the privates, but not in terms of the promoters, in terms of the residents. We have also spaces that are private in the middle of these blocks and have incredible function for the ones who live there, and they are not public at all. Just the owners can go there. But when we walk around, even in the small square, triangle square, they are visual importance. When you see these great buildings, facades, with the private gardens in the middle, like that suspended, that Babylonic suspended gardens, gives you a character to the city, which makes a place of this Bras Prata urbanization is a place of also of pleasure, reflection, and well-being. And that's how we tend to use the
Queres entrar?
Well, thank you for the invitation and getting on the topic of new opportunities and relationship with nature. I would say what I'm most interested in and what I've been, in fact, not working in the profession, and this is probably the reason why I was invited, but it's not what I really would want to discuss because my experience, professional experience, I have located opportunities, but I'm thinking of the large opportunities of the city, and that I've been actually testing at university in Lisbon Architecture School with my students, and that is the actual relationship of the city and the water and its physical support. And with the water, I don't mean the riverfront. The riverfront is, of course, the most obvious, but I mean the drainage system, how the rainwater falls on top of the land. We say that Lisbon is the city of the 7 hills, which means it's the city of the 7 valleys. We don't say this, but it's always the equivalent. Between 2 hills, there's a valley. And in a valley, there's a drainage system. And if we look at, and we talk about industry, and Bras Prata was in fact where the factory for our colonial war machine was in fact located. So they fabricated guns, basically. But when we look at Lisbon cartography, we find agricultural land in the water lines. We can actually overlay agriculture on top of water, and it's just there. We have those charts, have been beautifully drawn 150 years ago. So we have that information that I really care about. And we know later on today we all go home for dinner, and the average distance that the food has traveled to get to our plate is 4,000 kilometers. This is how it is, 4,000 kilometers average, which means that everything that arrives in our plate is loaded with CO2. So the cities have a new challenge, that is to shorten that difference. And this is a serious work. Shorten that difference means that we have to think how to produce food, because after that, when we have that problem solved, we can discuss architecture. So to produce food, I would say, and we're looking from cartography, has to be in the water lines. What have we done in the past 150 years? We have intubated water everywhere, and we dried completely the city. We have massive engineering. We have decades of engineering on sewage, on highways, on trains, on you name it. So take, for instance, and this is a case study that we have been developing on the last 5 years at school. Take, for instance, Alcantara Valley. Alcantara Valley is a valley that from the river to Sete Rios has 4.2 kilometers length. It's exactly the same length of Central Park, New York. So Central Park, imagine that we could start a park in the city, as important to the city as Central Park. We can do it, it's there. It's just a matter of looking at it. What have we done in the past 150 years to Alcantara? We have stuffed it with industry first. Silva Pinto cartography is showing us that some of it is still there. Then in the 40s came the highways. Of course, it was a symptom of progress and of a developed country. And we believed in this idea that building highways and building trains and building all these hyperstructures was a symptom of progress. So now the discourse is completely different. That's not a symptom of progress. A lot of the countries in the world are dismantling superstructures, and they're in fact concerned about water, drainage water, and how, in fact, sewage system works. I tend to think myself that civilization is, you can tell it by the way cities handle garbage, and cities handle sewage. Is not popular, but this is, in fact, my belief. It's an infrastructural civilization. It's not shiny, or it's not to put on magazines and so on, but this, for me, is really what matters. So when we analyze Alcantara, to go back once again, we have intubated the Ribeira de Alcantara, and we, to protect the pipe, we put a 6-lane highway. It's a very nice roof on it. And as you know, people in Lisbon, we go on Alcantara to drive on a 6-lane highway, and we have a limitation of 50 kilometers per hour. And of course, they are working on it because it's always falling apart. The pipe is really expensive to maintain every year. It's something like 50 million euros every year just to keep to maintain this pipe. So the challenge for Lisbon, I would say the opportunity is to dismantle the pipe. All the highways that we have there and trains, note this, we have as much area there, 1.6 million square meters, occupied by roads, occupied by trains, and occupied by industrial spaces that you cannot get at. It's just between roads. So with that space, if we would take it out, we would have 7 Baixas Pombalinas to build there. We would have 3 Campo de Ouriques. For instance, these are nice neighborhoods in the city to live. And what do we have now? We have a land that we cannot go across. We have no memories of these places and of all the neighborhoods that have been chopped by this industry. So as simple as that, we should drill a hole as soon as the bridge enters, touches the traffic and train that is neatly superimposed when it comes in the bridge. As soon as it touches the ground, they start doing all of this and wasting land and not being able to do permeability. So we have as much road as to get to Torres Vedras, there in the land. It's like 55 kilometers of road, if we, 1-lane road, I would say. So I would say that this would, if we look at the, again, cartography, we should have an agro park, because it's what we can see in cartography, and it could be connected to say, ISA, Institute of Agriculture, which was right there, or Gulbenkian on the other hand, and could have investigation of how to produce food in a permaculture kind of way, instead of having monocultures 4,000 kilometers away, wasting land elsewhere. And so for me, this is really The opportunity in Lisbon, it's probably not a 4-year, I'm looking at Felipe because she's in the 4-year range. She's not. I know her for more than 4 years. But we have too much of this 4-year thinking. We have to have a co-generational contract to actually have ambition for to get close to the most basic elements of that can really transform the city.
Thank you, Felipe.
So first, let me thank you and once again for your words and for being here. I'm always honored to be amongst excellent practitioners, and it's always inspiring, and they've always inspired me, will always inspire me to do better work, so it's always good. And I'm going to lay down for you 3 opportunities in Lisbon, which are quite obvious, quite clear in our heads. So I'm going to speak as a city councillor in Lisbon for housing and construction. But of course, we are a team of 7, and I work very closely with Joana Castro Almeida, she's a landscape engineer. So it's kind of interesting, an architect and a landscape engineer, inventing and thinking what the city can be. So 3 opportunities. The first one, as Nuno was discussing, are the valleys. If you really think of the city, we've designed very well 2 valleys, Avenida de Liberdade and Almirante Reis. And the other valleys are not designed. And they're not designed at all. They are not designed as built space or as green space. They're just not designed. And you look at it and you feel that they're not designed. It's just leftover space. Chelas, Santo António, Alcantara, even Ajuda has a lot of problems. We didn't really design the valleys. They were very difficult to build, and they were leftover space of the city. And the leftover space of the city is now an excellent opportunity for us to reinvent these spaces and think of what they can be. How can we think of the valleys in the 21st century? And this is the question we have for you. How can we design? So in the 19th century, they designed Avenida Liberdade. They invented Avenida Liberdade. That's where they were. That was the space of the 19th century. So what is the imagination for the 21st century for our valleys? What can Santo António Valley be? It's all public property. So we can really have a possibility to reinvent the site and to reinvent the valleys of Lisbon and to really have an impact within the 4 years. So we are insanely ambitious, but it's true, we can. Or at least have a proposal of what that space can be. So that's the grand scale opportunity which we have very clear, very focused in the city of Lisbon. Smaller scale, public property, housing, what I have. So Lisbon owns about 25,000 houses. It's the biggest landowner of the city and of the country. It owns more houses than the government owns in the entire country. So we have a lot of opportunity within these neighborhoods. It's about 65,000 people that live there. And they live in very poor conditions. And they really need improvement. And right now we have a big program from the European community to invest in these neighborhoods. Because of the COVID, the COVID recovery package. So another space for opportunity. What can our neighborhoods be? And that's where I'm focusing. And it's very interesting because it's more than just designing the city. It's really designing the city with the people. And that's really excellent. And it's where I am, it's where my team is, and it's a very huge honor to be able to do this in a time where we have a lot of money from the European community to rebuild our cities in the spirit of a new European Bauhaus, which is what Ursula von der Leyen said when she said she was going to have a huge package to help all countries. Yeah, we have to reinvent the Bauhaus, which is beautiful for an architect. Just think, how come the top political power is saying, I'm giving you a lot of money to reinvent the Bauhaus for every architect in Europe. She must have, I almost cried, I really almost cried. really almost cried. So little did I know that I would have the opportunity to decide what was going to happen to the money that was going to come to Lisbon. And now I do have this challenge. So what can we do with it? And that's the second opportunity. It's a huge opportunity, yes? We have a lot of competitions going on. We believe a lot of architectural competition, so we are just going to throw them out there so that people tell us what the new European Bauhaus can be: beautiful, sustainable, efficient, and that's the second opportunity. The third opportunity, it's even more bizarre. Now we're going to go to the small scale of the house. So I said, city, public neighborhoods, small scale of the house. In Lisbon, we have 48,000 empty houses. in a realm of 320,000 houses, which is huge. The central neighborhoods have, in every 3 houses, 1 is empty. We have a lot of empty houses. These are in the private realm, but that's really bizarre. 48,000 empty houses, and they say we have a housing crisis. So, and I see this as an opportunity. So I see this as a challenge. Okay, this is the space where we really can build an affordable housing market. Because we have small private landowners that have no money to refurbish the houses, and we have a lot of people who want to come into these houses for a rent which might be a little bit below market price. So that's really a third opportunity, and that's really about circular economy, and that's really about not building everything again, having a lot of green spaces, not a lot of density, a lot of new neighborhoods, but with not a lot of density, and really refurbishing all the houses that we can afford. So I think that's really 3 opportunities I'm going to lay out for you from the grand scale of the valleys, middle scale of the neighborhoods, and the small scale of the houses.
Okay, thank you. I will probably discuss a different level of the problem of the new opportunities is because we use now the city differently. Each time we use differently the city, and after the pandemic situation, we use differently. It's very curious that the mobility now is different than it was 5 years ago. The idea of house is different than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. The idea of using the public space, and I spoke about the issue of the terraces, is different. The uses that we have in the city now and the uses we'll have in the future will be very different. How do you think are the main issues then we need to think of this reinterpretation of the way we use the different components of the city, our mobility, our houses, our spaces, our offices, etc., etc. I will leave more free.
No. You were talking about terraces, but this is not something that is coming out now with the COVID, because, I mean, Prata has been designed probably 20 years ago, because the first sketches of Prata were around the year 2000. And this because we were not thinking to the present, but we were thinking to the needs of the people. So if you start thinking to the needs of the people and not to basically the spaces, this is a good start. Of course, now we saw that everything is changing, because before there were the houses, the housing, and then the office building. Now, I mean, there is basically this necessity of neutral spaces. So houses are becoming offices. I think that we experienced this needs in the last years, but at the same time, offices are becoming houses. So there is basically the need of spaces that can change, and probably this is an important point, because the flexibility of the building is fundamental for its success. Is the ability to adapt to different future needs, because of course we design now a building for a future that it's substantially unknown. So the building, the more flexible it is, the easier will be basically his capability of having a success in the future.
Yeah, just to use an example, just for what Paulo said, it's like I have the opportunity right now to work in a project that my office did 15 years ago, but it's office building that now is going through let's say a renovation, and it was nice. They call us, and so it was exactly in this view to think about. It was an office building. 15 years ago, we designed also terrace for these offices and outdoor spaces, but public-private. So, and probably 15 years ago was a little too advanced as a vision. So it was not really used. They didn't know what to do with this space. And now that we are, renovated the building from a, MEP point of view, so just to be more control more the energy and all these things. But now it looks like that all this open space, all this terrace, the new client thinks that it's a great opportunity. And so that was the easy part. The other difficult, not difficult, but challenging was, okay, just office space is not enough anymore. So what we can include, and so we study all the new needs, honestly, for even the younger generation, the young family, the young women with children that, they cannot spend an hour to bring the children, so we create spaces where to leave the children, spaces for have activity, spaces for restaurant, and we push the client to say, okay, we create all these spaces, but all these spaces need to be open not only of the people that they will work here, but all the area around that is not the most active area of Milan, so you give an opportunity to all the people that they live around. And so this it's a very nice challenge for an architect. As Lorenzo said sometime to us, an architect needs to wake up and be an anthropologist for an hour, a little bit of a landscape guy for another hour, a little bit of an engineer in the afternoon. So it's a very difficult, and you need all these professions helping you. So we don't substitute all that, but you need at least to have a knowledge of all of that. And the only other things that I want to say is I was lucky enough to work in this office and have the opportunity to work in many different countries. But I think, not to put too much in your shoulder, but I think the position of the administrator, people can really, really help. Because where I have been, it happened to me to work where there was a strong administration with strong vision. It can really drive, all the planning, and even us, architects, to not do big mistake. It's really not only not do mistake, but help us on opportunities, and help the architect sometime to convince the client, So as a team together, and I have had, good and sometimes bad experience, but I like to remember the good ones. But it's really an important role. So as much as you can support all the architects. It's an exchange. It's supposed to be an exchange. It's not just the architect do his job and submit and hoping that you approve everything. It's not like that.
Yes, of course. No, it's really a challenge that we are a team of 7 with the president and with the mayor, and we welcome this with a really huge honor and energy. We really do think we can do things in 4 years, which we might be crazy, but we do, and we really do work for that. And we just do this challenge of course, you've said already a thing about what the future can be like and what the vision can be. You've said flexibility is a huge part. So you said different types of spaces and a strong vision is another part. Like when we do have this vision for the valleys, neighborhoods, and houses, but we also embrace different methodologies of designing policy. The housing policy is going to be designed throughout the year, so we've started in February until December with all the participants in the sector, builders, architects, housing associations, everything. So we have 22 people around the table with me designing policies for the public, the private, and the mixed sectors, and that's really industry fabulous experience, because we can really imagine a city together, and it's not just about a strong vision, but about how we can build a strong vision together. And at the end of December, we're going to have one vision, but it's going to be built throughout 1 year with a lot of people, including young people. We're going to have in May an hackathon challenge, which you probably have no idea what it is. I'm 50. I look terribly young, I know, but I'm actually 50. And one of my young person that worked with me said, "Why don't we have a hackathon?" I had no idea what a hackathon is, but it's about for 1 weekend. We're going to have closed within from Saturday and Sunday groups of young people, young architects, technology programmers, and economists, just to think about housing. They're going to be closed from Saturday to Sunday, just thinking about how we can solve the empty house problem, the 48,000 empty house problem. They're going to be we're going to close them, throw them all inside, and tell us, work together using technology, and tell us how we can, maybe with creating platforms where people can meet easily to create cooperative housing, so where they can meet organically in creating networks so innovation can be more than just the architectural thinking, but really the way that people organize themselves. So I think we're going to use all the technology drive of the platforms to see if people can organize themselves a bit better in the housing sector, from builders, designers, and economists, and the whole everything working together as a whole, and programmers, of course. So I think it's the first hackathon. They have a lot of hackathons for apps, for like Facebook, things like that. So it's the first one for housing. And we have no idea what's going to happen on the other side, and we love it. So I think it's just one of the things how a city that is, and I'm from Lisbon, and I love the fact that my city is as old as the University of Lisbon, as the nation, or whatever. So it's 2,000 years old, insanely old, and I love that. So, but I also think that it's always been open to the world and open to innovation. So we really try to balance those things, and we always want to feel that anything that comes in the future that's new, it's going to feel the 2,000 years that the city has.
Great.
I don't really think we have. The way we live has changed so much. I think we live exactly the same way as we used to, and I think, of course, we went through with this pandemic's experience, which I think is triggering this discussion at this point. We had to face isolation, and many of us live in small apartments, and the contact we used to have with the outdoors was a balcony that most of us has glazed in illegally in Portugal. We had a recent fight against some illegal glazing of some part of a building, which has been dismantled in the meantime, and hopefully became emblematic that this is an illegal thing and it shouldn't be done. And in fact, these kind of spaces of interaction between the interior and exterior are quite important. Not just within pandemics, but in general. I would say if a house, instead of having 3 bedrooms, living room and kitchen, balcony could be one of the rooms, this room of interface with the outside. I'm thinking, for instance, of Immeuble Villas of Le Corbusier, an unbuilt project of 1918, I think, where he did a massive block that every apartment had a garden in it. It's one of the most beautiful. I don't know why this never got built, but this is really a pre-pandemic kind of building idea. It's very beautiful. Please go see it. Immeuble Villas in Bordeaux never got built. But it's totally visionary, as of course he was. So one of the recommendations, maybe you can tell Joanna is the person. Maybe we cannot have in the PDM saying that we cannot do a balcony wider than 2 meters, probably. Nobody knows this, but we architects cannot make balconies bigger than 2 meters. So it's maybe good enough to put the dog or the bird, but not to actually put a table and work there. And I read this morning that Lisbon has become the preferred city for digital nomads. So it's the most fascinating city for these people who don't need to go to the office. They can come to Lisbon, but then they have these 2 meter or less balconies, which is not probably enough for these people who in fact can buy the full building, but they can never really have a proper space to connect with the outside. And I must say, I lived in different cities in the world, and we have the best weather there is. We have one of the best, certainly the best cities in the world. So we should have adequate spaces to enjoy life and outdoor space. So there's a lot in our regulations that should be looked at and changed fast, because they are just creating a lot of obstacles for housing to become more enjoyable. For instance, in the historic center, never mind, you cannot build a terrace because it does not look good in Google Earth. And Google Earth now is the tool to look at city more than walking in the streets, as you know. But yeah, there's too much, in terms of the actual fabrication of the city, if you have to go through the institution, Câmara Municipal de Lisboa, it's for some strange reason, historically, has become a city. I had a friend says, you either do a house sim, casa sim, or a casa não. Câmara Municipal de Lisboa is a casa não, where the whole full institution is there to put obstacles in front of you, obstacles and obstacles, and it's changing now. But this, as I'm asked to come here as a professional, it's you have to be what do the Americans call this, commando or a marine architect in order to approve, because it's regulations and regulations. I work with lawyers. All projects I work with lawyers, the best lawyers I work with them, because I'm not enough. I don't have the skills to build what I'm building. In fact, of course, I work with extended. Luis, of course, is part of the team very often, and others. So it's really a multidisciplinary work. But we need better regulations, or we need little regulations. Somebody was telling me that in Sweden, the regulation for public workers, it's 3 A4 pages. In Portugal, it's a volume of 10 centimeter thick. As you are Portuguese, you know, you suspect it's like this. I didn't check, but I'm sure it is this way. So maybe. The same problem in Italy. Yeah, I know. So, and I know you're well advised in legal terms. Just reduce this to the minimum. I have to sign, if I go to the doctor, I have to sign a paper saying that it is my fault if something goes wrong. If I put the project in the municipality, I have to sign a paper saying it's my fault if things go wrong. Something is wrong here.
Well, thinking about that, opportunities and what's the future, I think we are already on that. And And we are already on that. We, planners, designers, teachers, faculties, universities, and of course, municipalities. I'm thinking about just 2 or 3 examples of work that we've been developed. A big park that our team have been developing for Lisbon municipality. We were talking about that, which is the new green park, which is supposed to be the next amusement, very popular amusement thematic park for the future. And very well, the municipality decides that before doing that, the park should be planned and should be put growing. And after being stabilized, then the equipment will come. So instead of having a bare land with lots of funny equipments, it's the opposite. We are going to have first a big park with lots of vegetation, which takes some time. And after that, the equipment will come. But coming to how that has to do with these new challenges, and mainly, for instance, the hydrology and water systems in the city and the valleys. And that park is in the very top of a high place in Pontinha, in Lisbon, which, though it's a very top high, it's the beginning of the watershed of Alcantara River. So when we talk about valleys, it's not just what we really look at valley. It's all the system that contributes to the valley. And so when we did that design of that park, it was the municipality was aware already of the needs and problems to be resolved in that park. And that became, I would say, and Katarina, my partner, one of my partners is here, could say that also, that became such an opportunity to make a much beautiful park than if those problems weren't there. And I'm just explaining 2 of them. One is that the water. The water of that park, municipality told me, you don't even think to put more strength in the existing pipe systems of drainage. So we had to, when it rains, and I would say it rains a lot in Lisbon when it rains, the intensity, I mean. So when it rains, the water should be kept inside the park as much time as possible. So this is like a mandatory thing. What was that became? It became an incredible opportunity to create huge clearance in the park, which are filled with water when it rains. So the park has 3 lakes because of that. And then the water runs very, very slow, so without forcing the existing or the future water sewage systems. And so it became very sustainable, but also very beautiful. So, and it was something that we don't even thought about, making a park with 3 big lakes. No one would accept that. But because we had that problem, fantastic. In the same park, a second issue. This is going to be a fair amusement park with lots of noise. And it has a lot of neighborhoods around. So they are already complaining because they heard about that. So we have to resolve that with sound barriers. Oh my goodness, sound barriers. We always think about those ones we see in the highways. How can that do that in the park? Well, it happens that to make the lakes, we have to excavate. And in another one, you know from physics, not from a landscape architects, but from physics in English, physicists, no, physics, from physics, noise engineers. The most effective thing to block noise, it's in terms of landscape, is first, earth. Second, vegetation, very dense. So to put earth barriers on those parks, it was unthinkable if there wasn't this problem of issue, because it's really, really expensive. But it's worthwhile, and you combine things. You took earth from the lakes to put on the borders of the park, and you became with the mounds of earth. Then we put a lot planted, it's not yet. Planted of dense vegetation. So a flat, a land that looks really but that's something that we never think. But when we were there the first time, it looks the most interesting spot of land in Lisbon, because it was bare land, 22 hectares without one tree of bare land. And so we think, oh my goodness, how it's going to be in the opening day. It's because the vegetation will be like that. So the opportunity of creating lakes and model relief, and this became, and now is in the middle, as we were talking, and it's already nice because it's just green, covered with temporary seedings, so that all of that work of topography that was done was not in the summer, it's too dry, so it's not blowing with like dust, and in winter with the strength of rains, it's not going flushed away. Wow. So we decided or proposed that to make a temporary seed. So now we have that sculpture garden waiting for the garden. So this is just two examples that we couldn't do that unless we were in a time that was lots of money in the public realm, but it was not the case. So we were able to make that incredible change of the land because of the problems. And just another example, but I'll tell you later.
No, because the problem in planning is that we have, as Nuno was saying quite rightfully, a thick PDM, which is like the law of the land. And we have the law of the land with rules which are very clear and very straight. If you follow them, it's okay. But if you're a really creative architect like Nuno is, and you really don't want to follow them, and then you have to bring in the lawyers because you have to really explain how you're not really going to follow the system. And that's really the challenge. And I really do appreciate the fact that you're pushing them all the time, because that's what you're supposed to do. But it's going to be difficult, obviously, because you do have a law of the land which is approved, and the laws are very clear, and you really need to follow them. So it's that is really a challenge. And I think, but we really do enjoy the challenge, but it's going to be difficult. And I think it's interesting that if we have to rethink the laws, of course we do, but then it has to be, again, approved in a municipality. The law has to change in a public way, with a public discussion and a public matter for everybody. And that's really the challenge. But I really always enjoy it, and I've enjoyed for past years before the challenge of really trying to push the laws a bit forward, because I think that's how we move forward. And I do think that's interesting. The park is beautiful, just to tell you, everybody. It's still, we just have the topography by now, but it's already beautiful only with the topography. So I'm really looking forward for it, because it's really close to one of my neighborhoods, one of my public neighborhoods. Palácio Cruz is one of the biggest in Europe, and I really think it's going to be very interesting. I think the movement between the neighborhood and the park is going to be very enriching. So I think.
And connecting cities.
Yes, the connecting is, yes. Spot. And of course, I didn't talk about the whole design of the land, but we follow the same spiritual leader, Gonçalo Ribeiro Teles. So we can always talk about Ribeiro Teles. He imagined the city as an entire system of green spaces, and he could have designed all of it, but he really didn't. But I do think he's one of our guides, at least one of my guides, and he was a very wonderful minister for the environment, and he was an excellent practitioner. So he was a politician, a practitioner, and just a human being, a good human being in general. So I think I understand the school you're coming from, and I follow it thoroughly.
I try to divide you.
Sometimes regulation don't really, the land is crooked, is hilly, it doesn't really apply. But in any case, and this is another opportunity I see here. Well, I'm an architect of a very fortunate generation, because there are older colleagues like Eduardo Soto de Moura that inspire us, that were inspired by Álvaro Siza, that were inspired by Fernando Távora, that was inspired by Carlos Ramos. So we are on a privileged sequence that gives us a lot of responsibility. And what I turn in my project in Câmara Municipal de Lisboa, my work is never looked at in a qualitative way. It's always analyzed juridically and quantitatively, but never qualitative. The municipality does not have a structure to analyze qualitative work by architects, and probably we are one of the professions when I travel to lecture here and there, you are an architect from Portugal. Very good architects, very, very good architects. Every time I put a project in, say, city center, my work is analyzed by two institutions for, I'm going to call it heritage. They call it heritage, but I'm going to call it heritage. DGPC, Estrutura Consultiva, ECR. I don't have anybody analyzing it for the intrinsic quality of the work I've done. But last semester I was curator at the Faculty of Architecture of some lecture series called Praxis, about practice, and I had the guests from Shanghai to Los Angeles, and 3 of them were in the board of contemporary architecture in each city. We don't have such a thing. So we see buildings that are of total no interest just because they're old. They are there inside they are registered as heritage. But say a work by Caesar is not there. Caesar's work is now being cataloged for UNESCO World Heritage. It's going to be World Heritage, but it's not municipal heritage, which is kind of funny, no, to think of. And we're talking about Caesar, but we could talk about many others, say Antonio Pereira, who's gone, etc., etc. So, yeah, so we are innovating, but this is urgent to be done, that the work of architects is actually analyzed in a kind of qualitative way, because otherwise what we have received from previous generations that we take care of is the best that was produced. What is the best that we are producing? All of us, heritage, we should be producing now. As Soto de Moura says, what does a good architect do?
But you're not being fair.
Heritage work.
We are classifying, as you know, in Cascais, we classify Atoguia, of course, all the houses, and now in Lisbon, with Bartolomeu Costa Cabral, for instance, we're now thinking about classifying one of his works as one of the best architects alive, still alive and practicing.
I'm talking about having a institution for heritage with the most qualified consultant group. And we have it.
Who's going to choose them? But we have an institution for heritage. You just don't like the people.
I've told this many, many times. We should have them because we are losing a lot of contemporary heritage in order to preserve things that many times don't have the material quality, the cultural quality. They're just there.
One thing that we've lost. You need to. That you're not being fair to the cultural heritage people. They're actually quite nice people.
They are nice people.
Thank you very much. I will conclude this section, but I will conclude in Portuguese. I will switch to Portuguese to the people who are in the stream and they are not here. And I will translate to Elisabetta and to Paulo after this. Naturalmente, uma sessão destas não é suposto ter conclusões, o que é suposto é abrir portas e abrir ideias e abrir problemas. Depois, as soluções, nós havemos de pensar nelas e havemos de aproveitar as oportunidades que elas nos derem. O que é importante nós percebermos é que todos nós somos apaixonados por Lisboa como lisboetas, portanto, se há coisa que a nossa cidade causa nas pessoas que a habitam é esta paixão lenta e latente que é muito evidente nos habitantes de Lisboa. Eu tive cá uma vez uns colegas nossos arquitetos espanhóis que curiosamente estiveram cá nos Santos e perguntaram, mas todas as músicas falam de Lisboa? Sim, todas as músicas falam de Lisboa. Isso não há exceção. Porque esta é que é uma grande realidade, é que a nossa cidade para nós é uma riqueza e a nossa cidade, que é aquela que nós nos apaixonamos lentamente, discretamente, mas é esta que nós efetivamente vamos viver, vamos certamente melhorar e vamos aprender todos os dias a viver de uma maneira diferente e talvez num sentido sempre melhor. Muito obrigado a todos e muito obrigado, Xana, por esta oportunidade.